Hello viewers, and welcome to the Legal Talk Show, where we are going to be unpacking the contents of the New Marriages Act. My name is Panashe Shibata Moto, but you can call me the Dynamite. And today, if they don't explode, I am going to explode, because there have been conversations going on the social media about the New Marriages Act, and I know you want to hear more about that. And joining me in the studio are two beautiful ladies, and I'm going to give them the opportunity to introduce themselves, starting with you.
All right. Greetings, Zimbabwe. My name is Nadia Mutisi. I'm a final year law student at the University of Zimbabwe, and I'm also an SDG 3, 4, and 5 advocate.
Right. Thank you so much, Nadia, and moving on to you.
Thank you. Hi, guys. Farai Chinyama. I am a legal practitioner.
Okay. All right. And thank you so much for joining us today as we talk about the New Marriages Act. I know there have been so many things going on, especially on social media.
Absolutely.
People are curious. People want to know what really is the New Marriage Act talking about, because sometimes we don't really understand the jargon and everything. So that's why we have you today to clear the air for us. So just for interest sake, why did you study law? Why law?
I got 15 points.
Okay.
I did art.
Okay.
And I went to law school. So I think my relationship with the law is an arranged marriage where I found love.
Okay.
I found myself there. It was the logical thing to do. I fell in love. It got exciting. And really, that's my story. I found myself there, and then it was the right place.
So we have another marriage there. You're going to explain more on that. And Nadia?
Why did I study law?
Yeah, why law?
Actually, it's the very same story as well. In high school, I was always a talker, and then I was an A student. I applied to the University of Zimbabwe. Actually, I applied to 2 colleges. One, I applied for journalism. My family wouldn't have it, and so it took me, and I found myself there. And as she's saying, when I did my first moot, then I realized that this could actually be something that I could do for life.
Okay, you know, one thing that excites me the most is that we have women in the studio. We have got you to really explain, because people are saying it affects women more, and we really need to know what it is for you. So I want you to give me a brief summary of what you think about the New Marriages Act. Just a brief summary.
Is that me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's an attempt, it's a consolidation of the marriage laws of Zimbabwe. I think for the first time we have a one-stop shop that tells us the type of marriages that are there, the other things that are not marriages but are linked to marriages, and the consequences of marriages. So it's an enactment that's come in to tell us about marriage, but then also to make long overdue changes to other enactments that are related to marriage and are therefore other consequences of a marriage. So your Guardianship of Minors Act, your Matrimonial Causes Act, your Deceased Estates Act. So really, I think it's a one-stop shop for marriage and marriage-related issues and consequences.
All right, thank you so much for that. And Nadia, just in summary.
All right, I think Advocate Chinyama has really expressed herself well about it. For me, as I was saying, that I'm an SDG 4 and 5 advocate, which is quality education and gender equality. I think the most important clause for me is the prohibition of child marriages. As a law student, and I'm sure you know, the Mutsuru and Sopoti case is like the holy grail. It is the case whereby they finally stated that Section 22 of the previous Marriages Act, the civil one, was unconstitutional. It was the one that was allowing, or in a sense, allowed for children to get married. So for me, as someone who's very passionate about women's issues and especially girls' issues, that's one thing that I can say is very progressive about the act.
Okay, and you're going to kill me with the section this, section that, but I hope I'll get it, and the audience at home will also grasp the concepts that you guys are talking about. So tell me, out of interest sake, I'd want to know what really stands out for you in terms of the New Marriages Act.
The civil partnership.
Okay.
It's right there. We're going to talk about it later, but it introduces a concept of a civil partnership. There's a test for it. They are 2 consenting adults. They are living together on a genuine domestic basis. And when they dissolve their union, it's governed by the Matrimonial Causes Act, which is the law that governs distribution of property at the dissolution of a marriage. So this whole time we've applied that law to divorce. Okay. And today we're applying it when you leave your side bae and your situationship and your living boyfriend. So I'm excited about it. I want to see how it plays out. I want to see how our courts interpret it, and I want to see what it's going to look like in the spectrum of all of it. So I'm excited about that. That stands out for me.
That stands out for you.
Yeah.
And yes, Nadia?
I think the very same answer as well. Like, firstly is the whole child marriages thing, that finally we were seeing a rise in child marriages. Apparently, according to the United Nations, about 1 in 4 girls around the world are married before the age of 18.
Yeah,
so I'm very interested to see, you know, like what tabulating it or putting it in the act is going to change, and whether that changes the atmosphere in Zimbabwe about it. But secondly, the civil partnership has been the cause of Twitter rants, and everyone has been talking about it. So I really want to hear what this conversation is going to be like. I, for one, was the person who was saying, no, it's totally okay, guys. Like, it's totally fine. I don't see where the snow house is coming in this. But like, from conversation, I'm seeing where everyone else is coming from, and I'm so interested to get into the conversation. Yeah.
Okay, fine. In fact, without wasting time, let's get into it. Let's talk about the civil partnership.
Okay.
You know, the terminology is just, and people are really talking about it. What about the other woman? What do you feel about that other woman?
Okay, can I just say that it's ironic that it's called the Marriages Act, and that the first thing we're talking about is the civil partnership before we talk about the actual marriage. But you know, it's it's a civil partnership. It's provided for in terms of section 41 of the Act. So it is not a marriage. So this enactment gives us the type of marriages in Zimbabwe and how you can get into said marriage, what affects validity, invalidity, and all of that. I'm sure we'll get into it. And then later, it gives us the concept of a civil partnership. It's 2 adult male and female persons who are living together on a genuine domestic basis. And they give us a list of what we refer to, you know, establish whether or not they are actually living together on a genuine domestic basis. So it tells us that we will consider the duration of the relationship. We'll consider the degree of dependence and interdependence. It specifically mentions the degree of financial dependence and interdependence. There's a whole list. I'm just getting to my act so we get through it. It tells us we consider the nature and extent of the common relationship. We consider whether or not there is a sexual relationship that's taking place. And so that question that says whether or not there is a sexual relationship appears to say that it's possible that people can chaya mapot but not have a relationship that is sexual in nature. And it tells us we consider whether or not there's been property that has been acquired in that situationship and how say property has been acquired. If there are children involved, we consider the care and support that has been given to children. And if we establish that this man and this woman who are over 18 who have lived together but are not legally married to each other. So there is no marriage of whatever form. As we'll talk about later, there is of course the civil marriage, the registered customary law marriage. There is nothing. No lobola has been paid. There is no civil marriage that has been procured before a magistrate or a marriage officer. They just live together. And then they pass this genuine domestic basis test. And so the law says this is not a marriage, but the law is extending protection or coverage to a civil partnership at its dissolution. And it goes for gold because it says at its dissolution we will apply the Matrimonial Causes Act, which is the act that we apply when we're dealing with an actual divorce. So it's not a bad time to be a side chick. I would say. I don't know how the courts will interpret it, but
it's really a good time, right? Yes, and yes, viewers, you are watching the Legal Talk Show here at the studio of choice, and of course, I'm your host, the Dynamite. Right about now, we're going to take a short break, but we'll be back soon. Hello viewers and welcome back to the Legal Talk Show, and also do make sure that you get in touch with us on our toll-free number, which is 577 for psychosocial support and health related challenges. And also do make sure that you follow us, like, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Say What, Facebook Say What, Twitter at Say What org. And right about now we're getting back to our conversation whereby we are talking on the New Marriages Act. And before we got onto that break, you were talking about the side chick. You know, there are many people that don't even understand what you're talking about. What do you really mean about the side chick?
It's okay, let's bring it home.
Yeah.
Mr. X, my name is Maiwavu, and he's married to his wife in terms of civil law. Chapter 511 that we're used to.
Okay.
Kanakuti, in terms of this new act, finally registered customary marriage, which means vakaenda kumba kwemdzimai wavo vakanobvisa pfuma madzibaba emukadzi wavo vakavapa mukadzi kuti amukadzi wako, ndobva vaenda kuna relevant marriage officer, ndobva vanochatiswa registered customary law union, which is a potentially polygamous union. Mr. X vana Mrs. X vobva vanotorana nafari votanga kugarisana zvavo. And so the test is 2 adults. An adult in Zimbabwe is someone who is attained the age of 18, I think internationally even. And so when 2 adults vari kugara pamwe chete, they are living together. And the act requires it kuti iwe on a genuine domestic basis. Tova tapiwa a list yezvinhu zvatinokonzera kuti titi genuine domestic basis yacho tingaisvika sei. So the act says tokonzera kuti munogara mese here, magara mese kwenguva yakareba sei, mukugara kwenyu mese what are the terms dzekugara kwenyu mese, pane vana here, vana vari kuchengetwa sei, pane midziyo here iripo, dzingava mota, mombe, dzimba dziri kutengwa mukugara kwenyu mese. Dzimba idzi dziri kutengwa nani, dzatengwa dzikushandiswa sei mukugarisana kwenyu mese ikoko. Pamuri kuchaya mapoto, anotenga chikafu ndiani, who depends on this one more than this one. Mukugarisana kwenyu, is your relationship sexual in nature, mukurara mese here. So when we consider all of this, when we then test this law in our courts, the courts will weigh and then see kuti 1 hour sure vari kugarisana on a domestic basis. And so the law says it's possible for you to be in a civil partnership. Iwe wakatorora kana kuroorwa. So this also covers the women in a different marriage. And so that's where the other woman comes in. And I think we talk about the other woman because they are tajaira. But we can even talk about the Ben 10. It's the 50-year-old mama who is chilling with an 18-year-old intern. Amurendera apartment yake, amubhadharira rent yekuflat, amutengera kahonda fit kake. This is a partnership ke. 2 adults living together on a genuine domestic basis. Mutemo wava what? Whether or not these people are married or unmarried. And so the law even covers your live-in boyfriend. Chachirungu, you've gone to college, tasangana girl, boy, we decide, we actually toba tese kuuse tikwedu takabatana maoko, takabata maveji edu atichanobika kumba kwedu tiri vairi. Hapana akabvisira mwerora, hapana akaenda kuna mufundisi kana kuna magistrate kuti tauya kuzochatiswa. Asi togarisana tese on a genuine domestic basis. Musi watinosiyana, kahonda fit kedu katata tenga keke. And the law says we refer to the Matrimonial Causes Act, and however property would have been dissolved in an actual marriage or a divorce is how we will distribute property in a civil partnership between your father and his side chick, or your mother and her Ben 10, or your live-in girlfriend and boyfriend were there. So really that's what the law says. It's saying kana tadana na nemwana wevana ndikamuchengeta ndikamudzidzisa a certain level of life kana ndosabva kuti ndichimusiya tofanira kumenga sure ndamaintain a certain level of life yandandamudzidzisa.
And thank you so much for that. Okay, but my question again is, let's say baba namai vari kugarisana mumba, and baba vane mota yawo yavainayo, a Range Rover, and that same car that baba has ndoiri kushanda futi kumba kwavari kuchaya mapoto. What then happens?
I don't know. The courts will answer. And that's the truth. Because this law has not been tested.
Okay.
We've had the president sign it in just recently. And so the legislature, led by the president, will make the law. And then the president will give it a set. But the judiciary will test the law.
Okay.
So until someone has gone to court and said, this is what happened, these are the circumstances. And that's the interesting thing about this enactment. It allows a civil partnership where someone is married in another marriage. But it doesn't tell us how we then deal with the property. To say, Mama vanishe ya mjipi. Asije jikabane share yawo. Pashare de jimbe bari kwenda nayo unafanya kwa bari kwenda. Because just say. And so until the law has been tested. I don't know.
All right, and do you also feel it's important for like to have you know, a clear thing on how best can we distribute the property? Because right now you're saying we cannot know what will happen when the law hasn't been yet tested. So do you think that is very important for us to have something that is clear set already?
I think the law is smart as it is already. I think section 41D, doesn't matter what it is really, it gives us a list of what we consider to determine whether or not they're living on a genuine domestic basis. But I think that same list gives us smart considerations to determine even how we would then deal with the property. If we were to have a law that tells us exactly what it is, and so it would be a problem. Because the stick must be able to bend to match the various circumstances that exist. It's today, Mama is the older one with a bent 10. Tomorrow, it's Dad with this. Tomorrow, it's the live-in girlfriend. The other day, it's just two 18-year-old kids who happen to find a room together and have shared it for a month. And so I think we're good as we are. I think our courts have it.
All right, and moving on to my next question. Nadia, you can take that, of course. So what are the recognized marital regimes that are present in the New Marriages Act?
All right, that's actually a question you should have asked the lawyer.
I think you're a semester away from being
one. Exactly. Yeah, like, so you're a lawyer already.
It's been a while. But yeah, I think firstly we can start with the civil marriage, right? So before we had Marriage Act 511, but now all the marriages are under this particular act. So we have the civil marriage. This is a monogamous marriage. I think one of the things that people have been talking about is that because of this new act and what it's saying, then you will not be able to get your adultery damages if your person or your significant other then, you know, just goes out and cheats on you or something, because I think of the nature of the civil partnership and what it's saying. But this particular act still states that the civil marriage, is a monogamous union, which means that it is to the exclusion of all others, which means that if someone wants to come into this particular marriage, they're not allowed to because of what this particular act says. The legal practitioner can, you know, let me know if I'm going wrong. Then we have a customary union or customary marriage. This is where lobola has been paid. I think the great thing about this is that it's potentially polygamous. It's great, you know, whatever you think or whatever you believe, it's potentially polygamous. So I think it's very important for people out there to know that if you're going to just have your lobola paid for you and then you go and register it within 3 months of that lobola being paid, and you register it and it becomes a customary union or customary marriage, is potentially polygamous. Which is to say that if your person then goes and cheats on you, you cannot go and say, this person has cheated on me, I want to get my damages, because the marriage in itself is potentially polygamous. Then the third one is an unregistered customary union. So it's not mandatory for you to go and register kuti lobola was paid, but then it will just remain unregistered. I'm not so sure about the implications of this particular one, so I can throw that over to our legal practitioner.
Yes, you can take that.
Okay. Yeah, really, that's what a civil marriage is. One man, one woman. Marrying another would constitute a crime of bigamy. Cheating would entitle the innocent party to adultery damages against the third party, the person that you would have cheated on. It's a monogamous marriage. It's the one we do at church. No, to the exclusion of all others. You know, your people will be my people. That's the one. And then a registered customary law marriage is exactly what it is. You've paid lobola and you've registered it with a designated marriage officer in your area. You must register it within 3 months. So your marriage officers your ministers of religion who are registered with the Minister of Home Affairs, your chief for purposes of the second marriage, the registered customary law union, your magistrates, and your ambassadors with certain exceptions. So you register with any of those within the 3 months that you marry or pay lobola, and then you become a registered customary law union. Those same marriage officers, to the exclusion of the chief, are also the marriage officers for purposes of the civil marriage. And then of course there is the unregistered customary law union, which is provided for in the act. Is really, we've paid lobola and we haven't done anything about it. So legally, it is not a marriage. It is not a marriage that is recognized at our law. But protection is extended to the unregistered customary law union for purposes of, for things affecting children, for guardianship, for custody, and also, I think for those two, mainly for things affecting children. And then, so if you marry today, if lobola is paid for you today, to become a registered customary law union, the law requires you to have registered within 3 months. If you were married before the enactment came in and you would like to register your union to become a registered customary law union, you must do it within 12 months of the passing of the enactment. So I think until next year, May, you must have gone to register. It's interesting in my view that outside of course the consequences, a dissolution where the registered customary law union enjoys protection, the two are essentially the same. Lobola has been paid for you, and under the unregistered customary law union, or an UKLU as we call it, there are no consequences for failing to then go and register. But then interestingly, this act also provides for another potentially polygamous marriage, which is called the qualified marriage. So this one is a marriage that has been done in terms of religious rights, which I think is mostly for the Muslim, the Islamic population. They have a marriage that's done by their ministers of religion following certain rites. And that marriage isn't one that's registered in terms of the civil law, and it doesn't conform to our traditional customary marriage where we pay lobola in terms of our culture. So recognition is also extended to that marriage. So my classification would be to say we have the civil marriage, which used to be the Chapter 511 marriage, and then we have the registered customary law union, and then we have the qualified marriage, and then we have the unregistered customary law union, the UKLU, and then we have, of course, the civil partnership.
All right, that's amazing. So I'm just getting to understand this. So the Marriage Act, let's say it accommodates most of the religions that are present here in Zimbabwe.
Pretty much.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful. And moving on to the question that I have with me, probably the last question, but we could pick up as we go. So what legal advice would you give to young people, especially concerning the New Marriages Act?
Okay, that's a very great question. I've actually written something on my Medium about marriage when I was studying family law, and one thing that I've noticed is I've never been to a hearing where people were arguing about these matters, but from reading the cases, you find that people get really insidious and very cunning when it comes to the dissolution of a relationship. And you find that marriage is always something that is able to protect you. But now, because of the civil partnership, one thing that I'm glad about the civil partnership is that the Hans who didn't have marriage to protect them now have some kind of protection that they are offered by the law. Because when you notice the nature of the cases and precedent, you'd notice that people can straight up lie in the court of law because property is now involved. So I think do your research about it. I think marriage in Zimbabwe is out of community of property, and sometimes it's in community of property. You know, when you want it to be in community of property, which means that if it's out of community of property, the property that you've acquired before the relationship is your own property, and whatever they came into the marriage with remains theirs. Whatever you're going to acquire together then becomes yours together, right? Essentially, that is like the layman trying to explain it. So I think it's very important for you to get to know that and to understand the dynamics of the different marriages, what it offers you. It's also very important to know that if you're just going to have lobola paid for you, and then you start complaining that I've been cheated on, I want to go and get my delictual damages because adultery has happened or whatever, you're not going to be offered any protection because that is exactly what you're choosing. So it's very important for young people to get acquainted with the law so that they know what they're getting themselves into. As a side note, I'd like to just speak into the whole civil partnership thing. That for me personally, the way that I see it is that life is continually evolving, whether we're watching on Netflix, on YouTube, whatever. there's so much outside influence about what young people can and cannot do. And I think cohabitation is becoming something that is extremely attractive to young people. Those who don't, I always hear this in my class at university, that why are you trying to get the law into your business? So for me, I think that the position that the legislature has taken, the position that Parliament has taken in this particular act is okay. I think for young people who are saying that they don't want to involve the whole bringing your family together and all of that stuff, and I think it affords a lot of women especially protection. I think that if anyone is going to lose out, it's going to be the man who is going to cheat, right? Because number one, your wife has a claim, and then the side chick also has a claim, you know? Okay, here's for the woman. But for me, I think it's important to understand the context, like where our social lives are going, the context of what's happening around us, that a lot of young people all around the world are not choosing to get married anymore. So this particular provision, the civil partnership, for me, comes at a time that is, I guess, crucial, because a lot more people are doing this, so it becomes very important to offer some kind of protection. Of course, there are excesses, as our dear advocate has spoken about, that people need to consider. But I think at the end of the day, the law, yes, exists to offer you protection, but you also get to decide what you want to do in your life. So if you're going to go around and you're going to have your civil partnership and you're in a marriage, whether you're male or female, the consequences are going to come and bite you. Absolutely. And at that point, you can't complain. So whatever this act says, still every single person has their own responsibility. And as women who are mainly saying that this is going to affect us, we also have the responsibility of choosing our partners very wisely. You know, and I think, yes, the law is looking this way, but at the same time, if you know this person is likely going to cause problems to me in the future, then you might as well cut it. So yeah.
All right, thank you for that. Let me ask, you're saying something about the law protecting that other woman. Okay, so on social media, I'm not the one about social media, right? They're now saying, okay, well, the other woman but then what should we do, because why should the law protect that other woman?
Okay, I think firstly, I really don't like us talking about the civil partnership, or like the general idea on the TL, that's the timeline on Twitter, that the civil partnership is all about a small house, you know? And I think maybe it's also what I've been exposed to, that I've definitely seen a lot of other couples who are actually genuinely living together. Genuinely, they were in a relationship, they were existing together, they bought property together, all of that. And I've seen that. So I feel like my context about it, the civil partnership for me, yes, it could be a small house, but I've also seen couples that were genuinely invested in each other's lives, but they just didn't want to get married. Okay. So it becomes important for us to color it in that way and not call it the provision, you must side chick, you get.
Okay, yes.
But I just feel that everyone is a human being and everyone ought to be protected by the law. Everyone, you know, everyone above the age of 18 is an adult, which the civil partnership is covering for that adult. I think you have the freedom to make your choices and make your decisions. But also, let's also see that under Section 41, subsection 2, it also talks about the possibility of the civil partnership involving children. Okay. At that point, it becomes very important for this particular act to even say that we're going to govern the property and who's going to take what, who's going to take what at the end of that particular relationship. Because whatever happens, if this provision was not there, in my own opinion, what would happen to the children? Of course, there's maintenance, but there's a kind of life that they've been used to, that they've been living with their mom or with their dad. And I think it becomes important to also consider that. So I think, yes, there's a lot of excesses that it has, but in a sense, for me, I don't think it's like too much of a terrible thing. I'm also of the firm belief that while Zimbabwe is, it's 80% a Christian nation and we have our values and we have whatever we believe. And I think our preamble does showcase whatever we believe as a nation. But I personally don't believe that my religion should color into what is wrong or what is right. I think everyone should have that option or that choice.
All right, and the discussion is getting very interesting, but then we're running out of time, but still okay. So to you, advocate, legal advice that you would give to young people out there?
I feel that we didn't mention this, but it's important.
Okay.
The enactment says that there is equality of marriages. And so I kept thinking to myself as I was sitting here, oh, I forgot to say that the phrasing I was going to use is, I forgot to say that a civil partnership can be upgraded into a customary law union and can be registered if lobola is paid, and that, or it can be upgraded into a civil marriage. And then I thought to myself, the enactment is very clear. It says that there is equality of marriages in Zimbabwe. And so in light of the new act, I can't say you can be upgraded. It can be converted into a registered customary law union. A registered customary law union, where the husband has not taken another wife, can be converted into a civil marriage, and you know, all of that. And I do want to mention that, interestingly, for purposes of the civil marriage, you have to be two, male and female, consenting adults wishing to be married. There's no requirement for lobola. There's no requirement for parental blessing or priestly blessing, or my pastor doesn't approve of you. Legally, that's really just all you need. But then I think, in conclusion, and for the legal advice that you asked for, I think that marriage is bigger than just loving each other. I think that marriage is important as an aspect of our estate planning, as an aspect of our financial planning, as an aspect of even our life planning in general. And I think that the legal advice that I would give generally to young people is that you must be informed. And so when you're informed that although I'm in a monogamous civil marriage, it is possible for my husband or my wife to then enter into a civil union on the side, or that I am in a registered or unregistered or registered customary law marriage is what we're calling it now. My husband can take other wives. And so once you understand what you've gotten yourself into, you can plan your life and your finances. And so if it bothers you so much that I'm married to this man in a monogamous union, but it's possible for him to go get into a civil partnership, when you purchase properties together, create a trust and register the properties in the name of the trust. When you purchase properties together, register them in the name of your children. When you acquire things together, create a company and register the things in the name of the company. When you acquire property in your own right as a woman, even when you're married, register it in your own name. There's so many smart ways to deal with these things. When protection is extended to these people, to the other woman or the other man, as you're calling it, at death and the distribution of a deceased estate, write a will. Estate planning is important. And so once you understand what a marriage is and what the consequences of the law are, you have been empowered to be able to plan, right, for the future. So there's so many ways around the law and so many ways to protect yourself. And so be in the habit of talking to a legal practitioner, seek help, find someone. We've got legal aid clinics, universities with law schools are running legal aid clinic. Zwala, there's an organization for women, Zimbabwe Women Lawyers Association. They give legal aid there. They've been kind enough to come up with a template that's been circulating on social media about the Marriage Act and what it means and a basic interpretation for a layman. Seek help and be able to plan around all of these things. So I think overall, and in my conclusion, I think as with any other law and whatever, it could be improved, but we've made significant progress. I can open one act and I can learn about the marriage law of Zimbabwe. And that one act has gone and made amendments to other enactments and has given me clarity with regards guardianship of children and custody and other things. And that act has told me who gets and who doesn't get. It's yet to be tested. It's yet to be interpreted. But we've made progress. And in the few elements that it sucks, which is primarily for my church mamas and the civil union, there's so many smart ways to protect yourself from an enactment that you feel may be unfair in a particular regard.
I'm sorry, Advocate, if I can just ask her a question I'm really thinking about. I think it's very important. You know how sometimes law cannot apply. If you pass something today, it can't apply to something that happened last year. But let's say I've been in a relationship for 5 years, I'm above the age of 18, that relationship is a civil partnership according to what is written there. Does this particular act begin to apply, or does it apply at the instance that it's been promulgated or the instance that it becomes an act? Does that mean that I can still go to court, let's say, next month and say that the relationship has ended, or it's going to start, I don't know, the 5 years after the act has been passed, or the bill has been passed?
So essentially your question is, does Section 41, which deals with civil partnership, can it be applied in retrospect?
Yes, exactly.
this is purely offhand for me, but I think that the test is whether or not at the point that you are approaching a court of law, you are male and female adult, you're living together, you are living on a genuine, and the last subsection D is the one that says all circumstances considered, you're living together on a genuine domestic basis. And then subsection 2 comes in to qualify what it means or what the test is to determine a genuine domestic basis. And so I think that your question would primarily affect the first requirement, which is the duration of the relationship.
Okay.
And in my opinion, I think if it's been 5 years, it's been 5 years. But even if we were to say it can't be then, it would have to be 2 weeks at this point, or 3 months from May, right? The other requirements would still need to be met. And I think when you've met all the other 8, and this one may have issues, I think you would still pass the test if your relationship were to pass the test. So I think holistically looked at, you can go next week. And I think it would be.
That's amazing, guys. Next week.
Oh yes, as the conversation is getting hot and hot and hot, and we are about to explode here. I wish we could continue, but then because of time, of course, we can't. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you
it
for
really
having
means
us.
a lot. And yes, viewers, you were watching the Legal Talk Show here at the studio of choice. Do make sure that you get in touch with us on our social media platforms. That is Say What on Facebook, Say What on Instagram, and also Say What org on Twitter. And also get in touch with us on our toll-free number, which is 577 for psychosocial support and health related challenges. My name is The Dynamite, and it's goodbye for now.